Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to do what I do every once in a while and try to do a positive video. And it's a positive video centered around the idea that yes, this quote unquote progressive message that is dominating everything, especially entertainment, which is what I concentrate on, in our culture, it is now on its back foot. It's now started to retreat ever so slightly. And I'm here to talk about why this will indeed continue. But before we get there, I just want to remind everyone that my superhero graphic novel is available on Indiegogo still. The link for it is in the description. You can either buy it as one complete story in the graphic novel or for $8 a piece for each individual story. These are stories that are slightly connected to each other, but you can read each independently if you want, about a darkness creeping into the world that I've created and how each team of heroes is starting to recognize this. And of course, is starting to fight against it. Also, there is a link in the description for my next upcoming graphic novel, the campaign for which will be starting in about 4 months, called CROM the Destroyer. It is an homage to Conan, but more towards the Celtic myth that inspired the character of Conan to begin with. It is about death, honor, and heroism. And you're looking at some of the spectacular art from all of my graphic novels in the background. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, you might want to click on those links in the description and go on over and see if my graphic novels are for you. But back to my topic of the inevitable downfall of this quote-unquote message of progressivism. Now, for my part, I like to go back to the principles of a thing and have that secure foundation to show that, yes, these things will not stand. But most other people like some tangible evidence, even though most of that is anecdotal. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with 2 recent news stories about this woke message and how it is imposing itself and at the same time is being extracted from the entertainment system and how it gets delivered to us. So the first one is the big example, and that is the example of Disney. And I'm not going to talk about its woeful Nielsen ratings, which is showing that Disney Plus is probably not doing well at all, or even the fact that Kathleen Kennedy looks like she's gone from Disney. No, let's set those aside and concentrate on something else which a lot of people have not seen or have not picked up on in the last week. And it's the fact that Disney is starting to fire people. Now, this is a bit of a ray of hope when you look at how and why this is going on. But at the same time, I would say the reason why most people have not heard that this is happening is because Disney is handling this in a very subtle, very internally political way so that it appears that they're not stepping on anybody's toes. So, what am I talking about? Well, a few months ago, there was a leak from Disney which showed that Bob Chapek was going to start a whole bunch of layoffs and hire freezing. However, Bob Chapek was then fired, and Hollywood had a collective sigh of relief going, oh, great, that's not actually going to happen. And they got Bob Iger back, but Bob Iger decided, yeah, we're going to continue on that path. And over the last week, there is evidence that those layoffs have begun. And the interesting part of it is that those people who are being laid off are in 2 different sectors, and they are very important sectors of the company. They are recruiting talent acquisition, which is HR, and diversity and inclusion. And again, this all comes from leaked memos from Disney itself, which were then confirmed by the fact that when this was supposed to happen, you got a bunch of people on LinkedIn saying, yeah, I just got fired from Disney. And these people are from those departments. They're from the HR department, and they're from the diversity and inclusion sections. But at the same time, I have to note once again, these people on LinkedIn, they seem to be handling this very well, which says to me that Disney is handling the entire situation in a very subtle way. We don't see these people crying like they did when they're all getting laid off from the tech sector. We didn't see these people starting to sabotage the company like they did when they were going to get laid off from Twitter. No, these people are just saying, yeah, I'm gone from Disney. But at the same time, these people are gone from Disney. It's not, we're going to be gone in 3 months. It's, I'm gone now. Now, a couple of important things to note about this. The first is that he's focusing on HR, it seems, with these layoffs. Why focus on HR? Well, because HR is going to determine who gets into the company and who gets fired from the company. And if you want to purge your ranks of a certain kind of people because they're just not contributing to what you need to do to run a good business, you do it by making sure HR falls in line. So fire the people from HR that are going to hire these people who aren't contributing. And first of all, if you look at the LinkedIn pages of these people who are saying, yes, I just got fired from Disney, I used to work in HR, what do they say on their pages? What do these people consider their jobs to be? Well, these people are the kind of people who say to themselves, I'm here to promote diversity and inclusion. I only hire people based upon certain characteristics like skin color. I am specifically tasked with getting people out of these categories, which again are determined by race or other personal characteristics. That's important, but that's only number one. At the same time, if you see them starting to get rid of these people in HR because they don't want them to get those people into the company anymore, you also have to look at number two, which is that they are also getting rid of people from the diversity and inclusion sections. So again, that says to me that, yeah, it's the diversity and inclusion people that they're trying to get rid of and trying to purge from their ranks and trying to get out of HR so that HR doesn't concentrate on trying to get these people and these people only into the company. Why? Because they're not good for the company. Now, I could be completely wrong about this. It could simply be the fact that these were the last people hired, therefore they're the first people fired, but 6 of one, half dozen of another. The end result is the same. They seem to be purging the ranks of people who are there as diversity and inclusion hires. And the other thing to think about after saying all that is the fact that, yes, this is a company, and at best, it's going to focus on nothing but the money. Some people would say, yeah, they should focus on nothing but the money. But we have to, at the same time, realize that the reason why these diversity and inclusion people got stuck in there in such numbers to begin with was because they're focusing on just the money. That is to say, this is a company. A company is a representation of a human being on paper, but since it isn't a human being, it doesn't have a conscience. The best you can hope for is it's going to seek its own personal interest, which is money, which is why, by the way, these quote-unquote diversity and inclusion progressive people got in there to begin with. Why? Because money is just a surrogate for power, and these people are all about power. Therefore, they saw it as a good fit, and this is why they're chumming up to these large corporations now, whereas in the past they used to think of them as the devil incarnate. But my point of saying all of that is the fact that, no, I don't think this is Disney turning around and saying, yeah, let's get rid of all of these people because we don't like their political ideology. Not at all. It's that, yeah, times are hard. These people are not contributing enough. They're not getting us enough money. Therefore, we got to get rid of them. If times are good, they would still be in there thick as thieves. So I'm going to move on to the small example of what has happened over the last week, and then I'll go into the reasons why I'm covering these two things next to each other. The small example is a small company, which I think the name of is crowdfunder.com. They've decided to ban all people who are of a Comicsgate origin or even slightly adjacent to Comicsgate in their crowdfunding platforms. Plural. And I'm going to talk about this just for a couple of minutes. There was a call between, it looks like, someone who works with Mike Baron being a Eisner Award-winning comic book writer, who, by the way, I just interviewed a couple of weeks ago, if you want to go check that out. But originally, this new platform for crowdfunding tried to bring Mike Baron in, and then all of a sudden it said, no, we can't actually deal with you. And this has happened just over the last week. And again, there was a Zoom call between this fella, who I think works with Mike Baron, and with the person who is the representative of the crowdfunding company. If you want to go watch that Zoom call, I'll put a link again in the description of where you can find it, although it might not be there for long. And by the way, shout out to Michael Bancroft for pointing all of this out to me. If you want to know about crowdfunded indie comics, go over to his channel. It's a great resource. But the point being, In this video, it was expressed by the fella from the crowdfunding company that no, he can't have his company deal with anybody who's even slightly adjacently connected to Comicsgate at all, because Mike Baron isn't Comicsgate. He's just a guy who will deal with whoever he wants to deal with. And if they happen to be Comicsgate people, he'll talk to them. He'll promote his stuff on their shows. It doesn't matter to him. The reason why Mike was looking for someplace else to promote his book, which is The Private American, and you can look it up on theprivateamerican.com if you want to. He, Mike Baron, used to be one of the great writers for Punisher, and he said to himself, well, what would Punisher be doing in this day and age? And he thought, well, he'd probably be down on the border trying to stop criminals from coming across. And so this quote-unquote progressive woman tried to smear Mike as a ist and phobe of many different kinds, and it didn't really stick. Why? Well, honestly, in talking to Mike, although he might have certain conservative ways of thinking, I really don't know. We didn't go into his politics. Honestly, Mike seems to me to be like an old hippie. And at the same time, it seems to be, I don't know this for sure, I think his marriage is interracial. But anyways, the point is, this really didn't stick. And by the way, this is nonsense to begin with, which Mike himself said to me. This should not be a story that is going to cause any disturbance whatsoever. It's about a guy trying to stop criminals from coming across the border. And he's being attacked by the progressive crowd because he doesn't want criminals coming across the border. Anyways, it's just ridiculous. And so Mike was looking for somewhere else to put his comic. He found this place. They said, sure, come on. But now they've done an about face 180 degrees and said, nope, you can't be on there. And no, it's not because of you yourself, because again, nothing is sticking to Mike that they're trying to pin on him. It's because he's adjacent to, he has not denounced Comicsgate in some way. And then the guy in the video goes on to talk about the fact that it isn't really even Comicsgate itself, because everybody keeps saying they're a diverse bunch of creators. It's because they're using the name Comicsgate, and that has a negative association. Why does it have a negative association? Well, because the quote-unquote progressive crowd have called them ists and phobes of one kind or another. And so this entire thing is based upon you, Mike Baron, are loosely associated with people who are part of a group which use a name which some people see as being not diverse and inclusive. This is the most ridiculous, flimsiest argument that you could come up with. So why in the world would this guy be saying, no, you, a major creator, someone who has won Eisner Awards for your comics, who is a comic veteran and great, we don't want you crowdfunding on our platform. Why? Well, he appears to have fear behind his eyes, which is to say they did an about face because someone got to them and said, we're going to destroy your little company if you don't do what we say. Now, I admit that is my interpretation of what he is saying and how he is saying it, but that's the most plausible explanation of what is going on. Now, how does this connect to the story I talked about Disney? Well, here's the thing. Disney is now joining all of these other large companies, like these tech companies, who are starting to get rid of these diversity and inclusion people. They're doing it subtly, but they're doing it nonetheless. What does this mean? Well, it means, first of all, that the people left who don't get fired, who are part of this diversity and inclusion group, they're going to burrow in like ticks. And they're going to try to start the entire process over again. I covered, again, I've been talking about this for the last month, a 2-hour Zoom meeting from the Writers Guild of America. This is not a small organization, where they had writers of comic books, writers of various television shows, television producers on this Zoom call. And one of them was saying, you see, first of all, it's all about power. And secondly, what you're looking at within Hollywood is a, as he says, systemically broken system which you have to disrupt. That is to say, you have to turn it over on its head. Why? Because he's saying these marginalized people are who you represent as a writer, and so you have to gain power little by little by being very subtle. He talks about it in that way. And by the way, this is all covered in one of the shorts that I put up on my channel just a couple of weeks ago, if you want to go look at that 1-minute statement of his. Anyways, he talks about how you gain power gradually, and when you have enough power and have enough people like you in the room writing with you, then you have control. And you have the other people, one of them even a producer of these shows, talking about, yes, that is a political thing that you have to do at some point. It's a political game that you have to play. This is all a discussion of the long march through the institutions, which is a progressive ideological way of thinking, which is to say you worm your way into an institution and you turn it towards your political inclinations slowly but surely by getting more and more people of your like mind into the company so that you can take it over. That's what they did. That's what they're trying to do still. But again, you have these people now being fired from the HR department and the diversity and inclusion people being gotten rid of. So again, what are they going to do? They're going to, as this fella said, pick your battles and make sure that you have stamina so that you can be here for a long time to subvert the entire process. Again, that's what they talked about at the Writers Guild of America. But the point being is that, once again, if HR is being controlled and all of this movement within the hiring and firing is going to put a bit of a cap on that, what do they have left? Well, these quote-unquote progressive people have these small companies to destroy. That's what they have left, like this crowdfunding platform that just began. This is, of course, the other tactic. If you destroy all of these small companies which think in a way which isn't completely diversity and inclusion friendly, that is to say, quote unquote, progressive, ideologically based, if you get rid of all of those, then all of the companies left are going to be on your political ideological side, and everyone who can be hired from these smaller companies into these bigger companies will be of that political stripe. So that's what you see going on right now. And again, it's not just right now. This is what they've been doing for years and years. But in order to get into the principal part of all of this that I wanted to talk about, I have to bring up two specific things that come out of this entire process. Number one, these people, their political ideology revolves around power. Again, I have multiple political science degrees, and you can certainly go look this up for yourself, but their political ideology is centered around power. That's why it always goes back to power. That's why they're always talking about things like systemic oppression or oppression of other kinds. Why? Because it's the powerless against the powered people. That's the whole dynamic. It's all about power. And here's the thing. If you have a large company or even a small company, which is, as I said a little while ago, concentrated only on money, and money is a substitute for power, then these people are going to fit right in. These people are going to have an extreme amount of control even before they get in. Why? Because the entire way that they think is to eat, breathe, sleep, power and power dynamics. So they're going to crush anybody who is simply concerned with power dynamics themselves, because other people are just doing it because I want to make a buck. But the thing is, they're doing this thinking that it's going to benefit their cause, because the only ones that they see as being left is the people who they are in control of. Therefore, they'll feed into these larger companies and take over one by one by one. But here's the thing. The blind spot in their thinking is to assume that, yes, everything is about power. Therefore, no one, even people who are opposed to us, do anything except for the reason of power dynamics. That's it. But I'm here to say there are plenty of people out there who do things for reasons other than power. I would be one of them, and some of the people that I've been interviewing over the last couple of months are also of this mind. We do it not out of power, not out of a reason to try to gain power for ourselves, but we do it because we love the thing that we're doing. And this is completely foreign to the thinking of someone who is a quote-unquote progressive. And what you have at the end of the day is people who love something, which is to say, yes, power is a part of love. Love is a virtue. I'm always going on about virtues. And that virtue, it does contain within it power. But the whole point of virtues is that you gain power in order to accomplish something that is going to benefit you in directing yourself towards a greater thing, greater than yourself. So on one side of the aisle, you have people thinking to themselves, I'm going to gain power in order to accomplish something which is greater than me. These are the people who love what they're doing. But on the quote-unquote progressive side, you simply have people who gain power for power's sake. That's it. Now, why do they gain power for power's sake? Well, it's because they simply want to do whatever it is they want to do. And here's the thing, that kind of quote-unquote liberty, it doesn't work with reality. That's the whole point of why they're constantly trying to gain more and more power, and their entire ideology is centered around power. It's because it doesn't work with reality, and when you try to live it out, reality is going to smack you to the ground. Therefore, they need to have power in order to divert this effect of reality smacking them to the ground over and over again, and they're never going to be satisfied with enough power because there's never enough to defeat reality. So they just insulate themselves with it as much as possible. But again, on the other side, and what we're going to have left after they've squashed all of these little companies, which are simply trying to make a buck, you're just going to have little companies and people who are trying to do what they're doing out of love for this thing. And that's what you're going to get with this alternative economy that is starting to arise. You have people saying to themselves, look, I'm doing X, Y, and Z because I love something. It might be that I love liberty enough so that I'm going to ensure that other people can live their lives in a way that is in accord with how they wish to do it, whether or not it's in accord with your political ideology or not. For me, and for the people I'm talking to, we're all people who love story. I was just talking to Eric July because he's my next interview that I'm going to post. We already did the interview, and he said, look, I'm going to be doing this until I'm old and gray. That is, as he said, his plan. And I completely agree with his plan because I have the exact same mindset. When I did my original book, which was my first self-published book, I said, even if I don't get enough money, I'm going to do it myself. If I have to pay for it myself, fine. So I'm not going to stop, especially now that I have 2 more books on the way and I have my feet in this entire thing. I know now how to publish things. I used to just write stories and leave them on my computer or put them in a box in my closet or whatever. Not anymore. I don't care anymore, even if the entire economy is to collapse and no one can afford to buy my books anymore. There's still avenues for me to do this. I can go to people who are very small indie creators and I can put my stories into their books, or I can just publish them even if it's for free on the internet. I'm not going to stop. Why? Because I love storytelling. And so if you get down to the very nub of those principles that underlie each of our way of thinking, if you have on one side people who are doing things out of love for what they're doing, and on the other side people who are doing things out of power for what they're doing, the people with the virtue of love are going to come out on top. Why? Because philosophically, really, it's reality versus selfishness. That's exactly what it is. Because love is really based in reality. The way that it is looked at in philosophical and theological and really the basis of our founding societies is that love is willing the good of the other. And everything within that statement is based upon reality. First being that you will the good of the other, which is to say, I admit that an other exists. It's not just about me, there's others as well. And no, this isn't others in a agnostic sense of, well, they might exist. No, it doesn't work that way. Why? Because this statement, again, which has been around for millennia, which is the definition of love, it is a logical premises. It is quite literally structured that way. And the way that logical premises go back to the founding works of Aristotle on logic. And in the first pages, he talks about logical premises and says, no, you can't do it that way. You can't say every blank that I know to be such, or every blank that I think might be such. It doesn't work that way. It needs to be If it is a logical premises, every blank without reservation in that category. I think that's chapter 1 of posterior analytics. So first off, it's a logical premises which states that the other is something other and exists, which is to say that they're real, that this is reality. Number 2, it is willing the good of the other. And what is the good? Well, there is a reason why we have the axiom, the true, the good, and the beautiful. Why? Because they're all the same thing. You're just concentrating on different aspects of the same thing in order to name them something different. But the good is the true. And what is the true? It's what is real. And number 3, what is willing? Because it's willing the good of the other. Well, willing is also concentrated on what is real. Because, again, go back to an ancient axiom that says the will is to the good as knowledge is to the truth. That is to say, if you wish to have actual knowledge of anything, you pursue what is true. If you wish your will to have actual effect, you pursue what is good. That is to say, if your will is to have any effect, it must first be directed towards the good. And as I said just a moment ago, what is the good? The good is the true. What is the true? The true is what is real. And so this entire definition of love, which again is the definition of love for Western civilization for millennia, which is the basis of our society, by the way. Why? Because if you go back to Augustine in the 4th century, he talks about the will as being directed by what? It's directed by love. And if you go farther back into history and you look at the ancients before him, they talk about the will. And they cultivated this idea of will, which broke Western civilization off from the other Middle Eastern civilizations in the Mycenaean period. And at the same time, or around the same time, the Jewish civilizations off from the others around them as well, by concentrating on a different way of viewing the will. It goes back in Greek to Orestes, and in Hebrew society to Job. This is what broke us off from those societies in ancient prehistory times. It's what was cultivated up until you got to Augustine of Hippo, where they had different definitions trying to figure out what the will was. Then you got to Augustine of Hippo, who says, no, will is this. And that's the definition that we've used to build our society for the last 1800 years, based upon the idea of love. The idea of love that has that definition of willing the good of the other, which is based upon reality, reality, reality. And what do you have on the other side? On the other side, you have people who are concentrating on nothing but power. And again, I can go back to Plato and show you how thinkers have said from ancient times that if you have people who are not concentrated on the truth, that is to say, on what is real, but are concentrated on themselves, then what happens? Well, he says, again, going back to Plato in his Laws, I think it's the 5th book, he says, when you have such a person, when times get tough, what happens? Well, they value what is their own above what is true. And so what do you get from all of this? What kind of dynamic do you get from this philosophical understanding of how human beings and this political ideology actually work? Well, on one side, you have these quote-unquote progressive people who are in retreat. The more and more they're put into retreat, the more and more they're going to concentrate on power. But really, at the end of the day, they're going to concentrate on power anyways. They're just going to do it in a hyperactive sense now. And when they concentrate on power, they're going to concentrate on preserving themselves and themselves only. Whereas, on the other hand, since these quote-unquote progressive people have already destroyed or are in the process of destroying these small businesses which are concentrated simply on making a buck, they will control them, they will destroy them, they will get rid of them. That's what's going to happen. And the only ones left are going to be people like me, people who do the thing, whether or not we're going to be making money, whether or not it takes sacrifice on our part, because we love the thing that we're doing. And that's the point. That's what it comes down to. I'm ready to sacrifice in order to get my stuff out there into the world, even if it costs me money, even if it costs me part of myself. Why? Because I love this thing. These people, the more and more they get into their power mindset, the more and more they think, I'm not going to sacrifice, especially when times get hard. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to concentrate on themselves and be selfish. So you're going to have selfish people versus self-sacrificial people. And again, if you're talking about corporations where they're only concentrated on the money, no, they don't have a conscience. No, they're not going to do the right thing. It's the people who make them up that are going to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And the point is that they're not going to go towards these people anymore. Why? Because they're not making them money. Why? Because they're selfish. Why? Because they're concentrated on power. And that's all they care about. They're going to start to bring in people who are self-sacrificial, people who will give more to their company than they're asked to give. Sure, it's just to make these large corporations money, but that doesn't matter. As long as you get rid of these quote-unquote progressive people, and you have a pool of talent which will actually, again, sacrifice for your company, then yeah, that's who they're going to choose. And the thing is, once again, it's not going to be them doing it out of some guilty conscience or conscience to say this is the right thing to do. No, not at all. Mostly it's probably going to be because of shame. It's going to be because of a David and Goliath story that we see playing out over and over again and is just going to get more prevalent within our world. You have things like a giant Marvel movie which has spent hundreds of millions in production in the second week, getting knocked off its high horse by a little movie about a bear on cocaine. Quite honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up and get people to believe you. Or at the same time, you get these comic companies who can't turn a profit. And then you get Eric July, a person who's not even a proven writer, coming out and selling a book and making $4 million. And I know it sounds simplistic because it is simplistic. We have to get back to the simple part of how things work. And that simple part is love the thing that you're doing. That's how we redeem our broken society. Concentrate on what's real, realize that that takes work and sacrifice, and move forward knowing that that sacrifice will lead to something greater, will serve something greater. And the funny thing being that the progressives have given us the exact conditions necessary for us to recognize this as the path forward. It is their actions, their continual selfishness, their continual pursuit of nothing but power, their continual denial of reality that will be their inevitable downfall and ensure that the redemption story for our society will be told. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, the links are in the description for my superhero graphic novels, which you can purchase right now, or sign up for my fantasy graphic novel, the campaign for which will be beginning in about 4 months. And if you sign up early, you will get a free exclusive pinup poster with your order. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.